Remember to sign up for Patreon and go and check that out, all the videos that are over there. We're going to do President Obama's final press conference, so let's get started.
Investments. The Russians were responsible for hacking the DNC. And
see how he says the Russians were responsible for hacking the DNC, and watch how his head goes.
Responsible for hacking the DNC.
On that downstroke, the DNC. Just like his head going down being forced. So him saying Russian responsible for hacking the DNC. It was forced for the DNC. He also couldn't keep eye contact with that word either.
What was your second question?
Do the tweets and do the statements by Donald Trump embolden Russia?
That was a really good watching him use his memory as she talked.
Do the tweets and do
See
the
that?
statements by
That look that he did right here went this way. It just lets us know how he remembered the question, what part of his brain that he's accessing when he's doing these questions.
If fake news that's being released by some foreign government is almost identical to reports that are being issued through partisan news.
His choice of the beginning of who he puts in front, fake news via foreign government. It just shows what is the forefront of his mind. Not fake news Alex Jones, but fake news foreign government gets first billing in his mind.
Venues, then it's not surprising that that foreign propaganda will have a greater effect, because it doesn't seem that far-fetched compared to some of the other stuff that folks are hearing from domestic propagandists.
So it just seems odd, Hillary Clinton's fake news rhetoric versus Obama's rhetoric. Fake news via foreign governments for Obama, the greatest threat. Hillary Clinton's fake news via domestic greatest threat. He sweeps the domestic fake news kind of like under the rug. Like, nah, it's the foreign governments that are the worst.
To the extent that our political dialogue is such where everything's under suspicion, everybody's corrupt, and everybody is doing things for partisan reasons, and all of our institutions are full of malevolent actors.
And there we see, as he's describing the fake news domestic, what is eyeing him that is at the top of his mindset is that fake news via domestic just believes everyone is corrupt, everyone is bad, everyone's malicious.
You start seeing things a certain way, and you benefit from the democracy benefits. America benefits from some new perspectives.
He really believes this, even though he's tracking down around this way. It's back to what we've seen already of him thinking, not thinking of deception on how to spin it, but at this moment just thinking.
And I think it should be not just the prerogative, but the obligation of a new president to examine everything that's been done and see what makes sense and what doesn't. That's what I did when I came in, and I'm assuming any new president's going to, that across the board on foreign policy, you want to make sure that you're doing it in a systematic, deliberate, intentional way.
And like how he stood up on that and brought in his body to emphasize that.
And since there's only one president at a time, my advice to him has been that before he starts having a lot of interactions with foreign governments, other than the usual courtesy calls, that he should want to have his full team in place. That he,
the future of the Democratic Party shouldn't be a continuation of some of your political approach. part of that is complaints that
Oh, he did not
decisions
like
you've
that.
made as president.
Do you see this pulsing when he asked? When he said something to the fact of, shouldn't be your political approach?
And as the leader of the party, have
He's still doing
structurally
it.
weakened the DNC and the Democratic Party, and they think that that has led to, or has helped lead to some of the losses in elections around the country. Do you regret any of those decisions?
Okay,
Those are my two.
good. And so people are just watching what reinforces their existing biases as opposed to having to listen to different points of view. It's the American people's job, and now the elector's job, to decide my successor. It is not my job to decide my successor.
The Americans' people job and the elector's job to decide, not his. It's a very powerful statement, especially with what is going on. He put the American people first in line before the electors. American people, and then he said electors. With Obama, because he speaks very slowly and he methodically thinks out everything he says, it's important what he says first and what comes after. And American people comes first. Electors second. So mentally, anyone who's listening to him will say the American people decided, electors follow suit.
And I've provided people with a lot of information about what happened during the course of the election, but more importantly, the candidates themselves, I think, talked about their beliefs and their vision for America.
Now he's starting on the candidates right into the question of, what should the electors do? And he goes into the candidates. The candidates themselves showed what their vision for America is. He is putting, right now, the blame back on the candidates.
And where Democrats are characterized as coastal, liberal, latte sipping, politically correct, out of touch folks.
With that statement, he actually paid attention. He gets an A in this class.
We have to be in those communities. And I've seen that when we are in those communities, it makes a difference. That's how I became president.
And here we go. He's going to start into the difference between the campaigns of his campaign, and he won't say it, but Clinton's campaign. And that is how he became president, being in those communities.
I became a U.S. Senator not just because I had a strong base in Chicago, but because I was driving around downstate Illinois and going to fish fries and sitting in VFW halls and talking to farmers. And I didn't win every one of their votes, but they got a sense of what I was talking about, what I cared about, that I was for working people, that I was for the middle class, that the reason I was interested in strengthening unions and raising the minimum wage and rebuilding our infrastructure.
See how he's listing all of his accomplishments during his campaign. And I don't mean accomplishments, just stuff he's saying, but his way of speaking to the people.
And making sure that parents had decent child care and family leave was because
It's also, as he does this, we can definitely see how his body moves with him when it's singing together.
my own family's history wasn't that different from theirs, even if I looked a little bit different. Same thing in Iowa. And so the question is, how do we rebuild that party as a whole?
And that's when he says, how do we rebuild that party as a whole? You don't say that to a party that's already built that way. You say that to a party that has been destroyed. And it just shows where he puts the blame as far as the election and the Democrats losing.
One thing that I have done is to be pretty scrupulous about not wading into investigation decisions or prosecution decisions or decisions not to prosecute.
Now he's saying right here, and he's showing no deception, that he did not weigh in on the decisions on prosecution, whether to or not. And we don't see any deception in that statement. It makes me go back, and if you haven't seen any of the DOJ or the Comey videos, I would suggest you do that so you can get a reference point for what I'm saying or talking about. But that Lynch acted alone in her decision process, and it was not influenced by anyone else.
I have tried to be really strict in my own behavior about preserving the independence of law enforcement, free from my own judgments and political assessments in some cases.
And he's constantly saying that. I mean, he's repeated that quite a few times. I stayed out of it. I stayed out of it. I stayed out of it. I just found that little niche to be very interesting. It is so important, especially when you're doing body language reading. If they don't ask the question, you don't get an answer. You can look at something all day long, but if the question was never asked to that person, whether they lie or not, you're not going to get an answer. And in a roundabout way, he was questioned, and look, we got an answer.
And I don't know why I would stop now.
I don't know why I would stop now. There's a lot of rumors and innuendos that Clinton is looking for a pardon. And he has just went through a spiel about, I'm staying out of it. Can you tell that the Obamas and the Clintons really just dislike each other?
I'm sorry, what's going on? Somebody's not feeling good? All right. Why don't we have, we can get our doctors back there to help out. Somebody want to go to my doctor's office and just have them? All right. Where was I? So,
apparently this woman was feeling dizzy and fainting. Or, I don't know exactly how that translates. Fainting. It sounds like she's doing it multiple times. She might have just been really dizzy. But from what I gather, she was fainting. And he just like waves it off. Let's get back to where I was at. But watch as this goes on.
we couldn't do it on the cheek. Now, it may be.
He's not very happy of the continued interruption.
Can somebody help out, please, and get Doc Jackson in here?
Now, mentally, you go through it. You just want to get through this press conference. Obviously, this woman isn't in dire death throes. She's just fainting. You've been standing here, oh gosh, he's going on 50 minutes now. So a little bit of irritation that she hasn't left yet and gone to see the doctor, or the situation hasn't resolved, is understandable, especially when you have a personality type that does not like being interrupted. You give it a little bit of, I called the doctor for you, okay, problem should be solved, go away. And that's what we see with Obama and his policies. I've given you this, why isn't it fixed? He's handed off the ball. Let's put it in football terms. He's handed the ball off. Why didn't you get it to the goal line? And you see this. Let's go back. Watch here. He's just very irritated at the situation. It just goes to show in how he does and goes through life. All right, I have seen the problem. I've thrown things at it to get it fixed. Why isn't it fixed now? And then as he goes on, he doesn't come up with a better plan. He just yells more of the same plan at the individuals to get it faster to the revelation that he wants.
Somebody grabbing our doctor? Of course. In the meantime, just give her a little room. Doctor will be here in a second. You guys know where the doctor's office is?
See, he's throwing more the same at it. Oh, let's just get her
Yeah,
there
just go
faster.
through the palm doors. It's right next to the map room. There he is. All right, there's Doc Jackson. He's all right.
He was asked if the elections, can you assure us that the elections were fair, especially with all the hacking accusations? And listen to what he says.
And will continue to be of concern going forward, that the votes that were cast were counted. They were counted appropriately. We have not seen evidence of machines being tampered with. So that assurance I can provide.
And there you have it, folks. Obama says that the elections were not hacked. They were elections, say that the machines were not tampered with.
That doesn't mean that
That doesn't mean that
we find every single
he's going to go on every single issue and how he looked in that. The way he accessed a memory in accordance with the hacking, or not hacking, but tampered machines. And we see how when his eye went this way, when he looked down, he's accessing a memory of a tampered machine. So his mind says that there was a memory of a tampered machine. You can speculate that it was tampered with by a certain party or a known party, and that is why it will not be brought up. But his mind says that there was a tampered machine.
potential probe of every single voting machine all across the country.
And that's where you cover your butt. He's talking about the hacking, and he saw Putin. I just want you to hear what he says he says to Putin.
President Putin in China, I felt that the most effective way
I had to slow it down.
to ensure that that didn't happen was to talk to him directly and tell him to cut it out. There were going to be some serious consequences if he didn't.
Tell him to cut it out. He's going to tell Putin to cut it out. Let's look at that again. And notice what his body is doing.
And tell him to cut it out. There were going to be some serious consequences if he didn't.
His body didn't move with his head. It got stiff. Now, he might have actually said something to the fact of cut it out, Putin, in some shape or form. You're suspected of hacking, and if you are, please don't do that anymore. Could have been said. But on the lines of cut it out, I just, the body just says those words weren't exactly used. But his eyes are saying that he said something along those lines. Interpretive narrative?
Talk to him directly and tell him to cut it.
The reason why I say that he didn't exactly say that to Putin is he couldn't keep eye contact with anyone in that room that he said that to. Obama lies, his body doesn't move with him, and he really can't look you in the face when it's an out-and-out lie. He may have talked to Putin about it. If you looked at the Putin video that is called The Nuclear Threat, Putin was getting very angry at the rhetoric coming out of the campaign, Clinton's campaign, and was getting very tired of being demonized. Really disliked that. So he had to deal with Putin as Putin witnessed Clinton's rhetoric on Russia. And here it is, he can't even keep eye contact with anyone as he says, I told him to cut it out.
There were going to be some serious consequences if he did.
And he had to look away on consequences. Like he started it out, stuttered on it, and then had to look away.
And in fact, we did not see further tampering of the election process.
And he brings his head down in that moment. When Obama deceives. He's giving you 90% truth with a 10% spin most of the time, which is why it is so believable. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this one. I picked out some of the things that I thought were the most important to go over. If you liked it, leave a like. If you liked the content, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.